It's D.
Hey, off the bat. Off the bat.
D.
It is D. Wow.
The pen was so brief.
Wow.
So Afrikaans symbolizes a violence that Khoekhoe and San people actually went through. So when you talk about extremely offensive term that is now crept into academia, because academia took it further, because it's academia that created them.
Dumelang molweni, re locha, Thobela, Sanbonani. Hello, from wherever you're watching us. Welcome to this episode of Umhlaba Talks. My name is Tiane Duta. Unyawo uzawufaka uthahla undayeni mhlamba ubenda manze khona ungqungqushe uziqelekazi. As usual, I'm not alone. I'm with my co-host Umhlaba. Umhlaba, say hi.
Hi, everybody. I am Umhlaba for this episode, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Umhlaba. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you, Tiane?
I'm well, thank you. So, of course, as usual, we're not alone. We have a guest today. And today's topic actually is we're going to be focusing on the dispossession of the Khoekhoe and San people. And to help us with that discussion is our guest, Dr. Cloete. Say hi, Dr. Cloete.
Hi, my name is Jacob Cloete. I'm representing Namaqualand today. So I briefly came to Cape Town to have this conversation, and then next week I will be off again. So thank you, Mshlaba, for inviting me. It's an honor to have this conversation today.
Thank you, Dr. Cloete. We are honored to have you. Dr. Cloete is a filmmaker, researcher, entrepreneur. Born and raised in a small town called Pieterfontein in South Africa, Jacob developed his love for writing and film. He bought his first camera while he was a South African Defense Force soldier in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. He attended the University of the Western Cape, where he graduated with his PhD in political science. His work feeds into the growing global scholarship on the politics of belonging, reflected in South Africa's xenophobic response and Europe's anti-immigration and anti-refugee policies. His postdoctoral work focuses on Khoekhoe, San, and the problematic colored identity in South Africa. He has authored a book called The Attempted Erasure of the Khoekhoe and San, which deals with the genocidal erasure of the community through colonization and the bureaucratic erasure through their classification as colored. So today, that's what we're going to be focusing on. But before we jump into the discussion, we have a small game just to settle us into the space. Over to you, Mhlaba.
Thank you, Tiane. So our trivia game is called How Well Do You Know Your Land? So we have 7 questions today. Some of them are multiple choice. So you should do okay, I hope. And you'll be given 1 minute to answer accurately. Okay, so I will be timing you. So let's get into it. So question 1 is a multiple choice question. The military engagement between the Portuguese fleet led by Francisco de Almeida and the indigenous Khoekhoe is known as the A. Khoekhoe Dutch War, B. Anglo-Boer War, C. Battle of Blood River, D. Battle of Salt River. Go.
It's D.
Hey, off the bat. Off the bat.
D.
It is D. Wow.
The Battle of Salt River.
Well done, Jacob. 1 point.
Well, I mean, the Battle of Salt River is still ongoing right now.
It is.
Yes. Correct.
Let's go.
It is. Well done, Jacob. Okay, so question 2, also multiple choice. There is a French theory that suggests the word Xhosa is derived from a San or Khoekhoe language and means A. Fierce, B. Loving, C. Ambitious, D. Creative. Go.
I will just have to pick B because I really don't know.
I think A again.
Tiana is correct.
You're stuck on the French
No, Tiana
theory.
is correct. It's A. It's fierce. Well done. So 1 point on the board for both of you. Well done. Okay, so question 3, also multiple choice, and it's your last multiple choice. Okay, what does the motto and on the national coat of arms translate to? A. Freedom is coming. B. Unity in diversity, or diverse people unite. C. It always seems impossible until it's done.
Can you repeat it again? Because there's two very similar.
Yeah.
Okay, so A, freedom is coming. B, unity in diversity or diverse people unite. So that's one.
It's B.
Tiane? C is it's all.
No, it's fine. It's.
Possible.
I think it's B also.
Correct. Both of you are correct. Well done. So that's you both have 2 points now. Yeah,
Freedom is coming.
it is. Okay, question 4. What is the indigenous name of Table Mountain?
Khoekhoe.
I agree with him.
Correct. Yo, you guys are doing really well. I think we should have made some difficult questions. Okay, question 5. What is South Africa's national floral emblem or national flower?
The Protea.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
I think you want us all to win. And
Yeah.
are you supposed to be like the first answer, the first one to answer?
Okay. So question 6. The big hole in Kimberley is considered one of the deepest cavities excavated by man. What mineral was mined in the big hole?
Diamonds.
Diamonds.
Okay. Yeah, well done. We definitely need to draft more harder questions. I think you guys are just like, ripping through these. Okay.
We like these questions.
So this is the last question, and please say your name first to indicate if you have the answer. Shout your name first, okay? Okay, so the question is, list the 5 animals that make up the big 5.
Jacob.
You were too slow. Jacob, go ahead.
All right. So it's the rhino.
Mm.
It's the lion.
Mm.
It's the cheetah. It's the buffalo. Oh, not the cheetah, the leopard. The buffalo, and then I'll say the Afrikaner sheep.
Mm-mm.
I know.
What?
Sheep.
The Afrikaner sheep, yes. No, I did it intentionally. You.
Okay, Tiana, go.
So I get a chance.
Yes, you get it.
The lion, the leopard, the buffalo, elephant. What's the fifth one again? I've counted the buffalo, right?
You did cover the
Lion, buffalo, cheetah, rhino. Yes.
rhino. So is it cheetah or leopard?
Leopard.
Okay. I'm giving it to you.
Yeah, it's a leopard.
Yeah, I'm giving you the
Oh, okay,
answer.
thank you.
Well done. Well done. So
The pressure is on. Yeah.
then.
Yeah,
actually
but I told you,
okay,
don't
well
let me
done to
win.
both of
Now
you.
they're not gonna like me. They're gonna think I bullied you.
No,
They don't like it when I win.
I wanted to slip in the Afrikaner sheep. I think it's one of those things. Is we focus so much on this classification of the big 5
Mhm.
that has been established by Europe. This is your big 5. Is supposed to be the most rarest, but what we don't know is that the Afrikaner sheep, which is amongst all of the indigenous communities in South Africa, has been as long as those animals.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but that's a conversation for another day.
An
So
interesting
that's
one,
why
though.
I slipped it in.
I like that, like pushing the envelope, pushing
Yeah.
back, on these categories that were bequeathed
Mm.
by Europe. Thank you for that game, Shaba, and thank you for winning. What do I win again?
A bundle of joy, which is just happiness.
Sounds like a baby.
Sunshine, the
Okay.
sunshine today.
I don't want the
There you
bundle of
go.
joy.
That's your bundle of joy to sunshine today. That's it.
I'll take the sunshine, not the bundle of joy.
No, okay.
No.
You have options.
No, no, I am not coming. So, in today's episode, like we said earlier, we're going to be talking about the dispossession of the Khoe-Khoe and San people. And actually, we're going to be focusing a lot on your book, which we mentioned also earlier, The Attempted Erasure of the Khoe-Khoe and San. In your book, you say the classification of people, hunter-gatherer and herder pastoralist, resulted from taxonomy, which was born in colonial power. These classifications are disputing the Khoekhoe and San's rights to land. Hunter-gatherers and pastoralists presuppose that they did not have a sense of belonging to specific geographic areas and therefore did not have the right to these lands. Now, I mean, that's a very interesting way of linking denaming and land.
Yeah.
Perhaps to start with, what is the correct way to pronounce the names of these groups? Or maybe even before that, sorry, who are Khoe-Khoe and San people?
Right. So I think that is one of the most important questions in post-apartheid South Africa is who are they? So what I'm trying to do through my book is to problematize um, the perception that we currently have of the Khoekhoe and San. And that perception that we have of the Khoekhoe and San is informed by the university and by museum images. So if you go to the museum, then you have a specific view of what the Khoekhoe and San people are supposed to be, but they are not that. It's a complex groups of people. So it's groups of people that were lumped together by academics over 300 years to become Khoekhoe and San. So, for example, um, before people used Khoekhoe, they were considered as Hottentot. And that classification started here in Cape Town from the 1600s already onwards. So, Hottentot people, which now is very derogatory. We can't use it, and it's very offensive to people. And a shortened version of that was created by various colonists called Hottentot. So they took the Hottentot away, and then they Hottentot. So all of that was previous classifications. So Prof. Henry Bredenkamp in the 1980s moved away from that specific racist classification towards Khoekhoe. Um, and the Khoekhoe derive from the Nama themselves naming them. So when these early explorers encountered the Nama people, they asked, "So who are you guys?" From the Cape to Namibia, and he said, "We are Khoekhoe." So Khoekhoe you can translate as men of men or proper human being. So the best way to translate this actual proper human being is like it's a human being. The opposite of Khoekhoe is what the Nama then said is Sa or San, in indicating a population. So those are the people who didn't resemble what the number considered as proper human beings. So without livestock, you have a particular way of living. So you are not us. So their son, we are Khoekhoe. And these two namings then crept in academia and it started a new classification. But there's an older classification before Khoekhoe and San, and that's Khoisan that started with Leonard Schulze. Now, this may sound very complex, and it is complex.
I was about to say.
It's complex because it's various groups of people lumped together. So, the Khoekhoe people currently is the Griqua, it's the Nama, it's the Korana people, Outeniqua, Atakwa, Hesakwa. It's all of those people end with a Kwa. Kwa means cows, meaning people. So all of them. And then you have various sun groups. Sun groups from the Khon people in Platfontein and the Khwe people, stretching all the way up the from Platfontein, South Africa, to up until Angola, various groups of people.
Okay. Let's
So,
hold there for now. Okay.
just before we move on, so that is considered the Khoekhoe and San people. So it's various groups of people lumped together, and it becomes a new classification of a new naming of groups that have been in Southern Africa for some time.
Okay, thank you for that response. And I mean, you're giving us the violation of these groups linguistically or through naming. I mean, which is very useful, which is very complicated. But I'm also interested in what happened before
Okay.
this violation, because in your book you talk about various. You list a number of groups, and I'm really interested into who were these groups before they were lumped into these under these names. and and also you seem to be using two pronunciations. There's a Kwa and there's a Kwa. So what is a correct way of pronouncing the names of these groups?
So the so there's the modern lexicon, or the way that we use and pronounce, that is that we use on a daily basis. So that's the Khoa, and the Khoa derives from an incorrect way of pronunciation in Dutch and later in Afrikaans. So it's extremely difficult to pronunciate clicks.
I'm not
So
sure if I agree, but
oh,
continue.
no, when you grow up, let's say if you are a Dutch person that grew up with Dutch, came to South Africa, and suddenly people say, but we actually the Namakwa's, then you later on when you write it or you have to remember it, then you might miss the click. So the clicks become difficult to remember, um, for different groups of people. But if you grew up with the clicks, then the clicks is part of your of your normal day talking. So that's why I'm saying it's difficult. So the Kwa is then people. It's supposed to be people. So if you say Namakwa or Tanikwa, then it's the Nama people, Kwa meaning people. But the correct pronunciation is you have rightfully noticed, is actually chaos. So it's with the S at the end.
Oh.
So the S, so in the language, is extremely interesting. There's a B and there's a S. The B and the S uh, determines the gender
Mm.
of the groups or of words or of things. So if you say Ahab, which is boy, then it's a B. It ends with a B. So when it ends with a S, like cows, then it's S.
Mm.
So the people in the Khoekhoe societies, was named, was I think is there's always the matriarch or the woman played a strong role in those communities. That's why it was named. It was S at the end, and it's interesting because you do get populations in the language, and that's where San comes from. The N at the end denominates a population. So there is different traditions than even writing Khoekhoe. You get Khoekhoe without the N,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got Khoekhoe with the N. So the one without the N is anyone who are Khoekhoe. But the one with the N means it's a group of people that still speaks the language. That's why the N is there. So N indicates population. S uh, the female gender, and
Mm-hmm.
and B the male gender. So it's interesting that these groups got the female gender. Cows.
Wow. So it's Nama Kwaus.
Cows.
So say if you can say the full name, Nama
Nama
Kwaus.
cows.
Nama
So
Kwaus instead
yeah,
of Nama Kwa.
yeah.
Okay. No, I mean for me, I think that's very interesting and very important because I mean to your point about not being easy to pronounce clicks when you're not raised with them. I think that is doing a disservice to ourselves because now we carry the violence of colonialism on our tongues. And I mean there are people who write about language, language being stolen from people or people being dispossessed of their language. And they equate that to one's tongue being severed.
Yeah.
So this difference between kwa and kwa for me actually is a good representation of that, your tongue being cut off. And I mean where I come from that means something and it's akin to witchcraft because then you can no longer speak or pronounce because words create. So now when you're saying something that is not that does not carry your spirit, what are you actually creating? So I think these words, it's important for them to be pronounced the way they are meant to be pronounced. And we can't be giving people who can't pronounce them a break because they can't. They have to learn.
So
I think we all have a responsibility to learn.
so the interesting thing about, if you go through my book, and you have, thank you. So and I want to bring a little bit of the book in here, is that Afrikaans became the language that the majority of Khoekhoe and San people speak today in South Africa. So that's why they don't speak the language, especially the Khoekhoe language. They don't speak it because on various farms, so from 1809 onwards, there was an act that the British government passed, and it was the Hottentot Proclamation. And it forced the remaining Khoekhoe people that were in what they call the Cape Colony to missionary societies. One of the first missionary societies being Ganadendal, the second one, Mamre, the third, Sierbrak, and then you had Pakkelsdorp, Klaarwater. So there's different missionaries. So on this, you force Khoekhoe people and San people, and then you put them under indentured labor. Indentured labor meant is that you forcefully had to work farmers because there was a shortage because the British Empire abolished slavery throughout the British Empire. So slaves couldn't be sold in Cape Town anymore or in the colony. So the Khoekhoe and San people then had to fill in for the labor shortage. So they were indentured labor. So they had to work 25 years, them and their children, for these farmers. And on these farms, they could not speak the language.
Mm.
And it's there where we see the kitchen Dutch develop, which later was appropriated and became Afrikaans. So Afrikaans symbolizes a violence that Khoekhoe and San people actually went through. So when you talk about the severed tongue, it's one of those things that has been part of this erasure and the genocide is that you were forced not to speak your language and you will speak a Creole version of that, and later then we appropriate it, we make a standardized version, and you don't have a right to that specific language that was created in violence. So that's one of the things why the Khoekhoe and San people are invisible in South Africa today is because they don't speak the language. But if you go and you study the records, that you would see there is many Khoekhoe and San people in South Africa that is not even aware of their ancestry just because they speak English, the shame that comes of years of oppression. So language, you are rightfully pointed out, played an important role in this particular oppression.
Wow. I think this is very interesting because I think the other side of being forced to speak Afrikaans is also, for me, I think it highlights people's ability to create under strenuous conditions because now they're creating a new language, as you said, Kitchen Dutch, which became Afrikaans. Now, even that creation or invention of their own was taken away from them. So it's like whiteness is always extracting, always colonizing, always taking away. And yeah, so it just shows that what we're seeing, there are continuities. It's nothing new. It's been the same thing all over again. But Mhlaba has a question.
Yes, thank you. I am so interested in this topic of the continued erasure of the language. And Khoe and San and other languages are not recognized officially in South Africa as yet. And for me, that links to how is it impacting people's daily lives. So, for an example, the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, which then obviously provides for the recognition of the Khoe and San and other, well, only just a few groups, actually not all of the groups, was published in English and Afrikaans only. And there's an assumption that indigenous people only speak Afrikaans. So it's that continued erasure, that continued violence of making people fit into a box when actually there are so many other languages that are existing. Maybe they're not being spoken as much anymore, but they're still there. They still exist. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts about what the impact this is on people's daily lives, especially when it comes to the government itself ignoring people's languages.
Mhlaba, thank you for that question. And I'm glad that you brought that particular question into the conversation. And I want to start off with something to answer your question. Is a friend of mine, she's a linguist, and she has a extreme interest in indigenous languages in South Africa, especially the indigenous languages being spoken in the Northern Cape. And over 2 years, the two of us traveled the Northern Cape in search of these languages. Um, these languages that people they say being spoken. And I can remember one day, after days of searching and looking, we got to one of the places in Uppington.
Mm.
There's a stretch close to that neighborhood where we were, we call Khoisan Valley. Now, Khoisan Valley is just informal settlements. So it's people who were dispossessed and pushed off farms into that informal settlement.
Mm.
And since I did through UCT, I did the foundation Khoekhoe up. I didn't expect someone to speak the language to me. So this person, after interviews, greeting me, said Mire,
Mm.
and it and then it repeated again Mire, and then I realized that this person is actually asking me, "How am I?"
Mm.
And this person was still speaking the language. And then finally, after we got the trust, a new world opened to us that these languages is still being spoken in the Northern Cape. So there's people in the Northern Cape who speaks Nama, the Nama Goap. Goap means language. Um, so the Nama language. So you would see in our constitution, it's Nama and Khoisan languages. So make a difference between Nama and Khoisan languages. Now, if you go to Namibia, there's no such thing as a Nama language or Nama Goap. Previously, there was a Nama Goap, but to get unity amongst the different Khoekhoe speakers and the Khoekhoe groups, they decided not to go the dialect route,
Mhm.
and form a standardized version of the language, which is called Khoekhoe Goap. So that's why you would uh, find different dialects spoken. So one of the things that we have to do in South Africa is then we have to follow one of the examples in our neighboring countries, which is Namibia, and first do a separation between Khoisan languages and the Nama, say there's a Khoekhoe language. Khoekhoe language is very old. It has been spoken from Windhoek to Cape Town all the way to Port Elizabeth or Gqeberha. So that's the region that this one language was spoken in,
Yeah.
and it has regional variations. And then we have different San languages, like the Khung and Kwedam that is being spoken in Platfontein. Now, interesting story is also me and Lorato Mokwena went to Platfontein, the school there, and all of that classes would teach in Afrikaans and English.
Mm.
We couldn't find one dictionary that is written in those languages.
Wow.
So the government have ignored their responsibility when it comes to the specific languages. But the Khoekhoe and the San languages not the only ones
Mm.
at threat. There's also the other indigenous languages that is at threat.
Yes.
And I think even though government has a responsibility, but also us um, as your so-called educated, they can read and write, has a responsibility to do something about it.
Mm. Thank you for that response. I hope it answers your question,
Yes,
Shab.
it does. Thank you, Jacob.
I feel like I have to check in every time. Is go up the right pronunciation, or is it
Go up,
like
yeah, it's with a B.
that's
That's
how it
the
is
yeah,
pronounced
G
originally?
O W A B.
Oh, okay. Because I've become suspicious now.
Why are you becoming suspicious?
No, because I mean, like, if you're gonna move from Kwa to or Kause to Kwa, and that being the standard pronunciation, then it means we have to interrogate everything that we come across
Please do.
just to make sure that this is the correct pronunciation.
Yeah,
Because we all have the responsibility to learn, if especially if we want to uplift the languages into spaces of power and intellectual. Um, So I had another question, and also in your book, you talk about the different pronunciations of Khoekhoe.
Yeah.
And so again, what is the right pronunciation and spelling? And also you mentioned some that are offensive, which we hear every day. And actually, I think one of them is also in the act, the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act.
Yeah.
So what is the correct and yeah, respectful? What are the correct and respectful words and
So
names?
I would start with what I chose and how I wrote the title of the book. I wrote it with the OE.
Mm.
So in Afrikaans, people would pronounce it as kuku, kuku,
Okay.
but it's not kuku. So in the Khoekhoe language, you pronounce the vowels separately. OE. So it's o-e, o-e, o-e. But if you say it fast, o-e, then it might sound for Afrikaans speaker or Dutch speaker, oi.
Mm.
So it's koi, koi,
Okay.
koi. So o-e. So you have to o-e it. But if you say it quickly, then that o-e sounds like a o-i, oi,
Okay.
oi in Afrikaans. So
So can you say it slowly, like the proper way?
koi,
Like the full name, the full word.
koi, koi.
Koi koi.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So that's how it's supposed to uh, pronounce. But because it is now more than a couple of 100 years that the OI is in the OI isn't.
Mm, mm.
Um, it has become part of our conversation. So the reason why I write Khoekhoe like that is because it's the accepted version in Namibia, the linguistic. So I'm trying to align my work with the intellectual and academic works that is happening in a neighboring country where we could learn from, because the Khoekhoe language is alive. People create in it, they sing in it. There's culture, there's art, there's festivals in the language. Children speak it, so
Mm,
it's
mm,
it's not a
mm.
dead language.
So it's alive.
So it's alive. So the best practices then is in Namibia, and so once you use the best practices, you kind of use that. So that's what I try to do with this particular book. So the correct version linguistically is the OE
Mm.
version, Khoi Khoi.
Koi koi. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So then you have the Khoisan.
Mm,
So Khoisan is extremely offensive because it's a racialized terminology, and those experiments on these groups of people, the Khoekhoe and San people, has started in the 1600s. And my book deal with one of those cases, Sarah van der Kaap, who committed suicide, and then her body later was appropriated. It was studied, dissected, and then she was impaled in front of the castle where the church is, the English, the
Mm.
cathedral where Mandela statue is. She was impaled there for the whole community in Khoekhoe people to see, rot the body
sure.
in it. Um, and these studies started from then onwards, and then it get to the Namanerero genocide in the 1900s in Namibia, where there's experiment conducted especially on female prisoners, and they studied the genital, the breast, and then the men, the skulls, and all of those things. And Leonard Schultz tried to show that racially, at a genetic level, there is no difference between the Khoekhoe and the San people, or the Hottentot, or the Bushmen, and they then termed them Khoisan. So it's a extremely offensive term that is now crept into academia, because academia took it further, because it's academia that created them.
Mm,
And then so it became an academic tradition that crept into the bill. So you will see it's Khoisan languages in our constitution, and Khoisan, the Khoisan Act. But this is two groups of people with different religions, different identities, different traditions, different, they culturally different even.
wow. I mean, what you've just mentioned right now about this appropriation of people's bodies, I mean, that hit me hard reading the book. And it made me realize that, honestly, a lot happened on this land, especially Cape Town. And when you really, really think about it, it's like we're actually living on a very, very spiritually dirty space.
Yeah.
Because if people were treated like that, and I mean, the image you painted when you were mentioning the impalement of Sarah and saying that it's where the statue of Mandela is, I think that link is very powerful.
Yeah.
It says a lot. You know, for someone to have been treated like that after death, and then we put our symbol of freedom on the same spot. I mean, do you have anything to say about that?
I think there is a powerful um, link that we can make there in terms of freedom. But instead of Mandela, I would have loved to see Winnie Mandela there.
Mm,
There's this one thing that we sometimes misses is the important role that women play,
mm,
and especially the anti-colonial movement, the anti-apartheid and the liberation struggle, and those figures become silent
mm,
because
mm,
Mandela could only stand there because it was Winnie's tireless campaign,
mm, mm,
even when she was exiled, um, put to the fringes, being arrested by security police. She kept that name alive. And there's little tribute that has been done to Mawini, and it's the one thing. So even though Tata Madibe's statue is a powerful image, and we
mm.
can draw association there, I feel a little bit uncomfortable
Yeah.
because I think Winnie and Sarah, there's the silence. Everybody speaks about Krutua,
Yeah.
but nobody speaks about Sarah. Everybody speaks about Tata Madiba, but they don't speak so much about Mawini. So I think a more powerful image for me would have been if we can draw parallels between Sarah and Mawini. But I agree with you. It's a powerful. It
Mm.
can be a powerful image or symbolism.
Yeah. Wow. I'm like, I'm lost because there's like so much that's coming out of this conversation. But I mean, I think we've said a lot about, for the time we have, about names and language. So maybe if we can move on to the relationships that the people that were here before had with land.
So that's actually really important. So that what we have to think about. So one of the things that we measure uh, how long people have stayed at a specific place is through archaeology. So through archaeology, you can determine how long there have been um, remains or civilizations. So through various types of archaeological methods, we can now roughly estimate that some of the early groups of Sun people might have been here 80,000 years,
Mm.
and then there's 30,000 years, so it's for, let's say, tens of thousands of years that there have been a civilization, or there was groups of human presence
Yeah.
in southern Africa. It might be even longer. Now, if we think about that and we think about how sustainable and how diverse southern Africa was before colonialism, there was no lack.
Mm.
The ships had to stop here to replenish. That's how plenty there was. So then we have to look at the indigenous persons, and it's not only the Khoekhoe and San who's indigenous. There's other groups that is also indigenous, and I recognize their indigeneity. So if we look at the indigenous people's relationship with land, then we see it was always in harmony.
Mm.
They understand that they are part of it and not outside of it. So then we see, if especially if we look at the Khoekhoe and Sons way of putting settlements, then they don't put permanent settlements.
Mm.
It's it's a mobile, so your footprint stays continuously um, minimal on that
Yeah.
particular. There's no fences, there's no borders, so that you can move with your livestock in a circular manner. So you give some parts of the land time to rest so that you
Yeah.
can go different. So there's a circular pattern. So there was a deeper understanding of nature um, back then, but we still have it. If you go into rural communities, then that's the first thing that rural communities will teach you is about the land. And then you start seeing this difference between the urban human being and the rural human being. The urban human being the modern one, and the rural human being the backward one. But the backward one have been years telling you that we need sustainable methods. And what does the UN do now? They implement everything that these rural indigenous people have told you, and they presented that they come up with this amazing type of knowledge. No, they took it from those particular communities.
We've been having it. Sorry.
So to answer your question is that there is a sustainability
Mm.
in the philosophy in indigenous knowledge that reposition the human being what in nature and makes it part of nature. So your footprint stays minimal. So land becomes extremely important, and access to that land becomes extremely important. So the moment you cut off that access, then you start seeing a crisis in that person's humanity and expressing themselves as human beings.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, you moving on to the next section that I was really thinking about as to how were those relationships then disrupted, and how that impacted the human beings and the land
So
with the arrival of the colonizer.
yeah, no, you said it. It's definitely the arrival of colonialism or colonization. But the one thing, and I don't want to get into this podcast with it, is that South Africa's colonial period, I'd say, could roughly start in the 1400s, late 1400s, 1497, yeah, onwards. Uh, with the first ships, European ships coming around this particular cape. And then progressively it gets worse for the indigenous person. So it is colonialism that affected, dispossessed, and caused that rupture for the indigenous person with, uh, with their land, their philosophy, their religion, and even um, everything that makes them human. So it's you rightfully pointed. It's what colonialism, and it's unfortunately one of the things we always have to come back to. It's colonialism.
I mean, thinking that, I mean, maybe perhaps if you can explain this to me, like I mean, 10-year-old, what did colonialism actually do to these relationships? Because what you've touched on right now is actually the impact. They disrupted it, and but then what do they do exactly?
All right, thank you for that. So colonialism in what we know now as South Africans started here at the Cape, and it started in 1652. And at first there was this almost type of mutual relationships, trading relationships between the Khoekhoe people and the Dutch. But later on, when the Khoekhoe figured it out that the Dutch is not intending to leave Cape Town. So what people doesn't know, it was almost 200 years that ships came across here. They dock like a couple of months and they would go replenish. So there was the European contact at that by 1652 was close to 200 years old already. So people understood that you're not here to stay. But when they saw that Van Riebeck was staying longer, they start building a fort, then the relationships start changing. And they didn't want to trade any cattle anymore. So, and livestock. So they wanted the Dutch to leave. So the first strategy was to not trade, don't give them food. So eventually they will have to get onto ships and then leave. But Van Riebeck countered that. He released free burghers and gave them land in Cape Town and said, you can do your own produce now here, and you have to start producing livestock because
What are free
livestock,
beggars?
Freeburgers is farmers. It became later the Trekboere, the Afrikaner. So they are the first group
Okay.
of what we become to know as the colonists in South Africa. So they got these plots in Cape Town, and they had to farm, and they had to produce livestock, and that led to the first Khoi Dutch War in 1562. Yeah, 1562, I think. It started the first Dutch War. Um, and unfortunately, the Khoekhoe people lost that particular one, and then the Dutch took a large part of the peninsula.
Mm.
And then later, especially with Sarah's, after Sarah's impalement, it the second Dutch war took place, and the Khoekhoe people lost a large part. But below that was this strategy of land dispossession. So you had to raid them. So you first strip them of the cattle and livestock, whatever livestock they have. So then you force them to migrate to the next group. So
Mm.
then this area is now empty. So then
Oh.
we take it. So that's gradually how this um, colony then got bigger and bigger and bigger up until 1795 when the British took over.
Mm.
So what a lot of people doesn't know is that up until 1795, it was a company, the Dutch East Indian Company,
Mm.
that was the colonizer. It was not the formal Dutch um, royal crown that pushes that colonialism. It was a
Mm.
company like the Ford or the
Okay.
Coca-Cola that
Mm.
that did that type of colonialism. So the Trekboere and the burghers during that time didn't have land. They When you dispossess the Khoi, then you lease the land back. So then the company took it, and then the company leased that land back to you.
Okay.
So it only became private property uh, in the 1800s when the British took over. So then they were giving this farms that they were leasing as their property. But up until then, all of the property was in a Dutch East Indian Company's um, books.
So striking this thing of leasing land back to people who already own it, because it's currently unfolding in KZN under Ngonyama Trust, where people who own land in terms of custom are being forced to, to lease it under Ngonyama Trust. So the parallels between what the colonial or the Dutch East Indian Company was doing and what is happening right now are just striking. It's I'm amazed by how coloniality has a way of propelling itself forward, even using the local or the indigenous population, under freedom, but the modes of dispossession are exactly the same. Um, so they're taking land and they are changing people's identities. And so, in terms of humans or people, we only talked about Sarah. So, what is happening to the population?
So the population, the force of the land, those who could flee, then they fled to neighboring groups. So you have to imagine the Khoikhoi society as links of a chain like this. So all of them are family members, or they customary link to family. So and we still see that tradition in other indigenous groups like
Yeah,
Xhosa, Tswana. So when you marry someone, then you become part of that
yeah,
family, and then families marry. So for example, Krutua was part of the Amatwa people here in Cape Town, but her sister was married to Odeswa, who was the 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 leader of the Kuchokwa. Now, under the Kuchokwa, you have different other groups, and they were from a link to the bigger family. The Kuchokwa is again linked to the Griqua. So if you look at the Kuchokwa, they were from Saldanha all the way to Mildisflay, um, Somerset, to the Cape. So that's their migration route. Then you have the Griqua that migrate that their territory was from Piketberg all the way to Fredendal. Then you had the Nama. that was from the Little Nama, that was from Vredendal all the way to the Orange River. And then you have the Great Nama that was inland into Namibia. All of them linked like this. There was intermarry. And so when the dispossession took place, then the majority of the group then will fled to the other group if they can. Those who doesn't then become either indentured laborers and stuck in the colony. Once you get trapped and stuck into the colony, that's when they strip you of your identity, your religion, and that's where your dehumanization took place. So it's by no accident that the majority of Khoekhoe and San languages is still in Namibia, is because it took much longer for that dispossession to took place. So by 17, by the end, let's say by the end of the colonial period, that marks the colonial period, which is about 227 years, there was 19 wars, 19 wars of dispossession. So that's over 200 years, there was 19 wars, and it's hard to imagine how long that dispossession, so that systematically people get more trapped. You were forced into missionary societies. You were forced onto farms. You were forced to work on those lands that you were once was yours once. So that's how the dispossession took place, and then the racial classification slowly but surely start taking place from 1828 onwards with Ordinance 50, where they created two racial categories, the colored category and the European category, and then later uh, in the 1800s, I think 1895, they put the black category or the native category in it. And by 1950, um, you only had about three races. You had European or white, you had black, and then you had colored. Now, the majority of Khoekhoe people were classified as colored people starting in 1828 onwards in, in, in the Cape Colony and later in South Africa.
So I mean, I prefer to put it the other way, actually. I would say it's 227 years of resistance.
Of resistance,
You know,
yes.
instead of dispossession. Of course, dispossession is what resulted. But then from what you're telling us, you're saying these groups and languages and identities still exist, you know, in Namibia and then in other areas within the country. So for me, I would see it as 227 years of resistance. So now you're also mentioning the rise of the creation of the colored identity.
Yeah.
So what does that do to the Khoekhoe and San identity, and who becomes colored?
Right. This is interesting. Is that the Khoekhoe identity is something new that people has to learn. So colored people knows what a bushman is. When they call you a bushman, they know when you're called a hot knot. So these are the terms. It's extremely racist, but this is the terms that they know. So the Khoekhoe is Prof. Henry, the late Prof. Henry Bredenkamp's attempt to rescue a racist discourse. But what happened is that he created a strange category that people are not familiar with. Now, in that Khoekhoe, we identify more as Griqua, Nama, Korana. You see, that's where your identity lies. Not with the Khoekhoe per se. So the Khoekhoe is classifying groups of people that had in many cases the same language, that had the same culture, the same religion, and the same indigenous knowledge. So Khoekhoe doesn't, people, if you go and ask colored people, they don't know colored, they don't know the Khoekhoe. But if you go and ask the older family and you ask them about Hotnot and Busman, and you ask them about Griqua, Nama, and all of this, then you will get actually the, the true information behind the scenes. And that's what I'm trying to do with the book and my education, is that if you identify with the race concept, then identify with the racist concept, but then link yourself to either Nama, Griqua, Hesekwa, Outeniqua, all of those groups. For now, don't pronounce the cows like me yet. Just identify, and then later, when you are ready, then you introduce the cliques. You
You are
introduce,
kind.
and then
You too kind.
then you introduce the language. But the one thing, if you go to Namaqualand, all of them can still do the khabara. The majority of people, they know the ancient old indigenous knowledge of the field, of the field, and all of those missionary records. If you look in those missionary records, you would see that they were classified as Hottentot. So these are Khoekhoe people who are speaking Afrikaans.
Great. Okay.
That it still has the culture, uh, but not the language.
Right. I mean, there's so much to cover under this topic, and it's really difficult to sort of like fit everything within the time limitations that we have. But I think another area that I think would be interesting to touch on is what were the relations between the indigenous groups that were in these parts, like Southern Africa, before colonialism?
You make me happy, but
Because I mean, I'm asking that question because at the moment, there's a lot of tension between the Nguni groups and the colored people. And also when we attended the public hearings on the Traditional Leadership and Cohesion Act, there was a lot of racism from both sides, actually, which for me was very surprising. I wasn't ready for that. And especially from people who identified as Khoe and San, and also in other parts from people who identified as Nguni, who were making these like horrendous and hectic statements about Khoekhoe people. So before the arrival of before colonialism, how did these people relate to each other?
all right, amazing. So I think it was yesterday in my class, my final class here at UCT as a guest lecture. My class focused on this who was supposed to be the African,
Mm,
and it literally focused on this ancient old interconnected society. So, for example, let's take the Khabra. Then you will see that Khabra is very close to the Mkhenso
mm,
in terms of dance. Now, how long as a society do you had to live together that you guys are doing the similar dance? Then we look at the cliques. Also, people have 3 cliques
mm,
of the 4 cliques that is within the Khoekhoe language. So, for how long must you have lived together
mm. Yeah.
for cliques to get into that language? So then you look at leader figures like Makanda and David Stearman and the Stearman family, especially what is now Taberga, then you would see that the Honakwa Khoi live closely with the closer people there. So Makanda even married into David Stearman's family, and they spoke
Mm,
both isiXhosa and they spoke the the that specific dialect in that specific area. And they were imprisoned on Robben Island together, and they escaped together. 2 of them died. David luckily um, made it off the island, and then was later recaptured again and exiled to Sydney. But Xhosa and Khoekhoe, there's almost, especially in that specific region,
mm,
they were
mm.
living so close together. It's coloniality and colonial racial project, that specific epistemology that created a black figure, a
Mm,
colored figure, and a
mm,
white figure.
mm, mm.
The colored figure meaning the mix,
Yeah.
the black, the pure black figure, and the white, the pure white. And what we don't realize is this is literally just classification that
Yeah.
took place to divide and conquer, because you couldn't oppress David and his family across the different various ethnic groups.
Yeah.
But if you divide them to educate the one, you give them one a little bit more of then you get to that racial project. And if you make the one believe that they're a little bit better than the
Mm,
other,
mm,
then you
mm.
create tension between these groups, so that they forget that, yo, but my grandmother is that side. And then you would see in the 1950s up until the 1980s, there's people who moved between colored and black, black and colored, to that movement. And I don't even want to start with Aussie. Ausi, which is an, a Nama word for elder sister,
Mm,
but you also find it in Tswana,
mm.
and it means customary. It means exactly the same responsibility. There's no difference between the two, and then they do the same dances, the sitapa and the namastap. I
Wow.
don't want to. So we are more connected than we're different.
Actually, I'd say we're the same.
There you go.
And because also I was struck by that, because in your book you mention, you cite someone who talks about, I think it's Han,
Yeah,
who talks about the
Theophilus.
role of women in Khoekhoe societies. And then something that really struck me was the highest oath a man or a person could swear is on their sister.
Yeah,
In Xhosa, we have the same thing.
you see.
And in fact, the elder sister is called Umafungwashe. Ukufunga is to swear or is to take an oath.
Wow.
So that parallel for me was just like so striking. And also, even within the group, the names of the groups, some of the clans in Xhosa, they are actually very similar to some of the Khoe-Khoe names, group names. For example, Khoekhoe, which I would assume will be Khoekhoe.
Yeah,
Uh, say it?
it's actually Gori cows.
Khoekhoe.
Yes, but so that's the old name.
Yeah. Because in Xhosa, there's a clan called Amakekwa.
Oh,
And the parallels was just like you can see how things are changing over time. So it's and then there are similarities between these groups. I mean, we're running out of time, but there's something. I was watching a live recently, and I forget this guy's name. I think Darren Kempfer was talking about these similarities or the sameness within all these indigenous groups, and was problematizing the fact that Khoisan-ness was sort of like awarded to to the colored group. He's saying if we all have these traces and connections to the Khoekhoe, why is this identity then bequeathed or awarded to this one group? What does that do? You know, and I guess he was making a point that this is still, you know, the work of the colonial project, you know, in the form of divide and conquer. Because as we are talking right now, you know, we can make traces that show that actually we are all the same people.
yeah, I agree with
So,
that.
but I think I highly suspect that we might need a follow up episode because we have not even touched on solutions. Maybe just as a way of wrapping, how do you think these historical dispossessions of identity, land, personhood, even can be restored and redressed? And also, how can we restore our connections as the Southern African indigenous groups?
All right, so I think the work that you guys are doing is on the right path. I think the first thing that we have to do is to reconnect indigenous groups um, to the land specifically. It's sad for me that uh, a time like now, when you're in the Makwalan, the flowers is blooming and you see this diversity coming. The children sitting in the classrooms and they learn everything but what is happening outside.
Mm,
So one of the things that has to do is that restoration with the land, and that is in terms of indigenous knowledge. Take kids out of the classroom. You teach them what is a yellowwood tree, the uses of that yellowwood tree. What is a sweet thorn tree? What can you do with the gum of that sweet thorn tree? Why does ants gather sticks or termites gather sticks 2 or 3 days before uh, the rain is coming down? So there's so much knowledge that we can teach children, but we force them into school to get to matric that they can't use because only a few can get into university and much fewer can actually get a job with a university degree nowadays.
mm.
So it's that restoration with the land. Bring the indigenous child back to the land and teach that person the indigenous knowledge.
Well, I mean, Lauren Hill called it miseducation. And I mean, also we have not even because in your book you touch a lot on the role of the university,
Yeah.
and we are a research center based at the university, so it would have been really really great to have been able to go into that. You know, the role of the university in these dispossessions and erasure of people's identities. So, and also I think your book and what you just shared right now also shows that there's a lot that we already have in indigenous knowledge. I always trip over that word. In indigenous knowledge, because this the role of women that you
Yeah.
highlight and what we talked about earlier, for me addresses the question of patriarchy.
Yeah.
Because currently we are a society that is struggling with toxic masculinity and patriarchy. And what you touch on in your book shows that actually everyone had a role and there was no domination of one gender over the other. And even the fact that the groups, the group names are feminized or are
Yeah.
feminine, I think that is such a powerful, I don't know if that's the right expression
No, it
to
would be.
describe it, but I think that's such a powerful information to know and to dig into and to recover and especially when we're addressing the social ills that we're currently facing as a result of, because it shows that patriarchy is an import, is a colonial import.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so much we can learn from you and from your book. Thank you for your time. So, is there anyone or any work that you would like to highlight as we close?
Yeah, I would like to highlight the work of Lucretia Boysen. Lucretia Boysen is the founder and director of the Quena um, Arts Institute. She's currently located at the Castle of Good Hope. There's an art studio, and that art studio focus on indigenous art, and it's wonderful work. So whenever people have an opportunity, pop in, speak to Lucretia. If Lucretia is not there, um, check the work, and then please support these indigenous artists. Their work is just as good as
Mm,
any other artist, and I think that's the work that Lucretia is trying to do, because art is always such, is considered as the highest achievement of Western society, but a lot of that comes from Africa.
mm,
The techniques, there's a lot that comes from Africa, and sometimes we forget that we have to reclaim
yeah. Mm.
art in the art spaces that was taken from us in terms from the mask, the things that we're doing. So go and check out Lucretia Boysen's Arts Institute at the Castle of Good Hope.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cloete. Shaba, any final words in closing?
No, nothing from my side, just to say that this has been so insightful. And I think what I take away from this is that we are more connected than we are separate and divided. And I think, yeah, that's something that we must always keep in mind, that we are all linked.
Thank you, Mhlaba.
Thank you.
Dr. Cloete, in your book, you write about the erasure or attempted erasure. But for me, I'm seeing it as a recovery of what was lost. And it also shows that actually our healing is within us. We need to stop looking outside. Actually, it's already encoded in us. And if we can go back to look at indigenous knowledge and what we carry in our DNA, in our spirituality, in our ways of being and ways of existing, we already have the solutions. As you cited the UN work, which is actually appropriated from here and being sold back to us as new work. We've been having it. And with those words, uh, thank you for watching. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.